An Alabama grand jury is calling for the abolition of the Huntsville Police Department due to its rampant corruption.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Let's go ahead and jump right into last week in Southern labor. Here is what workers in the U.S. South and the American colonies were up to from February 14th to the 21st. Just a reminder, this segment will be truncated. The full content will be in the newsletter, which you can subscribe to at tvlr.fm. The newsletter lands in folks' inboxes every Tuesday afternoon. In new union campaigns, 13 workers at King and George in Louisville, Kentucky, filed a petition to hold a union election with the United Association of Plumbers and Pipe Fitters, UA Local 184. 60 security guards at United Parks and Resorts in Orlando, Florida, filed a petition to hold a union election with the Security, Police, and Fire Professionals of America, SPFPA. 16 workers at Starbucks in Dallas, Texas, filed a petition to hold a union election with Starbucks Workers United, as did 19 workers at a location in Marietta, Georgia. 38 security guards at Kerberos International in San Juan, Puerto Rico, filed a petition to hold a union election with a Spanish name private security union. 23 workers at Copart in Lebanon, Tennessee, filed a petition to hold a union election with the Copart Collective, presumably some independent union. 60 workers at Oakview Health and Rehabilitation in Conway, South Carolina, filed a petition to hold a union election with the United Steelworkers, USW. In election results, 4,200 workers at Amazon in Garner, North Carolina, voted 2,447 to 829 against unionization, with the Carolina Amazonians United for Solidarity and Empowerment, a huge loss in the campaign to organize the shipping behemoth. In settlements, grievances, and unfair labor practices, former workers for Stacey Abrams' New Georgia project are alleging that the organization fired them for attempting to unionize with the Teamsters Local 728. The union plans to file an unfair labor practice charge with the NLRB. Workers at Casey Trees in Washington, D.C., who plant and maintain trees for the city, are unionized with the International Association of Machinists, IAM, are saying that management is stonewalling at the bargaining table and refusing to negotiate in good faith. The IAM has filed an unfair labor practice charge with the NLRB in response to management's refusal to bargain. In strikes and bargaining updates, Hilton hotel workers near Orlando, unionized with Unite Here, Local 737, held an informational picket outside their workplace last week as the company has refused to give them a fair contract. The workers, some of whom are making as little as $11 an hour in Orlando, Florida, are fighting for higher wages and a better pension. Federal workers continue to be attacked by the current administration. Some workers who elected to participate in the Fork in the Road initiative last month and had that election accepted, then were fired anyways. At least one such person had their firing reversed after the increased media attention. Among the people fired that were frantically rehired was the acting chief of Defense Nuclear Safety. WTOP in Virginia spoke to a disabled veteran and Trump supporter who was part of the layoffs despite having good performance reviews. He told the station, quote, "I voted for Donald Trump, but this is not what I was expecting. We didn't think they were going to take a chainsaw to a silk rug." WSB-TV in Atlanta spoke to a veteran who had worked for the local VA for 12 years, who was also laid off. The Washington Post details several such stories, including one person who was fired and who had worked for the Park Service for 25 years. The VA's Office of Research and Development largely hires based on time-based appointments, not permanent career staff. 83% of the staff are on those temporary appointments, and they have been instructed not to renew contracts. This is the same office that developed the cardiac pacemaker and the nicotine patch. The office is one of the largest hubs for medical research in the world and could be looking at losing, again, 83% of its staff in the coming years. Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate. Laid off federal workers should look into the Unemployment Compensation for Federal Employees program to help them during this transitionary phase. The American Federation of Government Employees, AFGE, and other federal worker unions sued the government over these firings. In their statement about the suit, they said, quote, OPM's egregious firings were made on false pretenses and violate federal law, including the Administrative Procedure Act and other statutes defining federal employment and OPM's role. OPM, the complaint asserts, acted unlawfully by directing federal agencies to use a standardized termination notice falsely claiming performance issues. Congress, not OPM, controls and authorizes federal employment and related spending by the federal administrative agencies, and Congress has determined that each agency is responsible for managing its own employees. Boeing in Huntsville is laying off 71 more workers due to changes at NASA. The International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, IAMAW, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama, which represents some 300 workers at United Launch Alliance, took a strike authorization vote last week as their negotiating committee heads into bargaining with the company. The contract expires in May. In Fairfax County, Virginia, the American Federation of Teachers, AFT local there, is fighting against proposed budget shortfalls by the school's Board of Supervisors. In Lorton, Virginia, the Transportation Communications Union, TCU-IAM, held an informational picket at Amtrak to protest the employer Drummocks stalling at the bargaining table. The union says workers there are paid half the industry standard and have gone a year without a raise. IAM District 837 is preparing for negotiations with Boeing in St. Louis, Missouri, which will begin in June. And the executive board of the National Association of Letter Carriers voted unanimously against sending a revised tentative agreement to the membership. They're going straight to arbitration. Political and legislative updates. In Texas, after they banned abortion, new data analyzed by ProPublica reveals that for women hospitalized when they lost their pregnancies in the second trimester, the rate of sepsis shot up by more than 50%. From 2019 to 2023, as the maternal death rate declined by 7.5% nationally, the maternal death rate increased in Texas by 33%. The Trump administration announced that Medicare will no longer cover most telehealth services starting 1st of April. The IAM is calling on the Trump administration to enforce strong penalties against Chinese shipbuilders because of their alleged unfair labor practices. The Texas Observer reported on an ICE prosecutor in the state who ran a literal white supremacist Twitter account saying things like, quote, "Yeah, I'm in a courthouse waiting on warrants. Turns out there's a lot of B work to be done to make mass deportations happen." Another quote, "America is a white nation founded by whites. Our country should favor us." Another quote, "All blacks are foreign to my people." Another quote, "Freedom of association has not existed in this country since 1964 at the absolute latest." He further clarified that that post was referring to the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And finally, he said, "I'm not a commie, I'm a fascist." Again, this guy in charge of immigration law. Super normal country. The Corps of Engineers has identified 600 energy and infrastructure projects that could be fast-tracked under Trump's declaration of a national energy emergency. Louis DeJoy announced he is stepping down from the post office, a frequent target of attacks from postal unions over the years. Messages I got from letter carriers were more of a concerned nature than a joyful one, fearing what might come next. Speaking of what might come next, the Washington Post reported that Trump is planning to completely ignore the law and remake the Postal Service by executive order, dissolving its congressionally created independent structure and absorbing it into the Commerce Department. When asked about the reporting, Trump did not deny it. Trump's nominee for Labor Secretary, of whom much was made because of her support for the PRO Act, backtracked on her support for the PRO Act in her confirmation hearing, specifically the provisions that would repeal state right-to-work laws and the joint employer rules, two of the biggest provisions in the damn legislation. In Alabama, HB 89, a bill increasing access to maternal health care, which was authored by local Democratic Representative Marilyn Lands, and SB 22, a bill cracking down on companies that violate child labor laws, passed in the House and Senate respectively. HB 29, however, which would add more red tape barriers to unemployment insurance for Alabamians facing joblessness, also passed the House. An Alabama grand jury is calling for the abolition of the Hanceville Police Department due to its rampant corruption, and Kentucky unions are fighting a rollback of state workplace safety regulations. If we missed anything, let us know at tvlr.fm/contact, and we'll try to include it in next week's roundup.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.